One-on-one, the conversation flows. Unfiltered thoughts as the truth unfolds. Lessons learned and paths they've trod.
Abisoye Bello, bridging technology, real estate, and the future of ownership. With over 16 years of experience across technology and innovation, Abisoye Bello is a visionary founder, digital strategist, and Web3 entrepreneur. As the CEO and founder of Isle, a cutting-edge PropTech and Web3 startup, he is redefining real estate ownership by leveraging blockchain, digital identity, and tokenized finance to democratize property investment. Early beginnings, a self-made technologist. Abisoye's journey began at 16 in Nigeria, where he self-funded his education while working as a computer engineer. After earning his Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer (MCSE) certification from NIIT, he pursued a bachelor's degree in computer science, laying the groundwork for a multifaceted career spanning IT infrastructure, web development, and product design. Global career, from corporate to blockchain pioneer. After roles at DHL and GT Bank, Abisoye relocated to China in 2012, where he honed his expertise as a web developer, Modab Enterprises, and IT manager, Jiayu Group. His passion for innovation led him to Jazba Sports as a UI designer, followed by a deep dive into full-stack development, blockchain, and IoT. Web3 breakthrough and founding Isle. In 2020, Abisoye joined Abigachi, a pioneering NFT gaming startup, as a front-end engineer, where he contributed to blockchain integrations. This experience ignited his focus on decentralization and digital ownership, inspiring him to launch ZC Robotics, 2021. Audivar ID, 2023, a digital identity platform. Audivar Embassy, a diaspora engagement platform for Nigerian embassies. His flagship venture, Isle, is a multi-platform ecosystem merging PropTech, Web3, and legal tech to fractionalize real estate investment. Key components include Ilevault, developer onboarding and due diligence. Isle Legal Marketplace. B2B platform for legal verification. Isle Mini App, Telegram-based fractional property investments. Ilerefer, a community referral engine to grow the ecosystem from the ground up. With the successful implementation of a native utility token, $LE, and plans for a decentralized governance structure, Abisoye is positioning Isle as one of Africa's first community-driven real estate ecosystems. While building Isle, Abisoye is also contributing his expertise to urban systemic health partnership initiatives, leveraging his tech, identity, and community experience to support healthier, more inclusive cities through real estate, data, and digital tools. Invention and impact beyond real estate. In addition to his work in Web3 and real estate, Abisoye is the inventor of Panda Watch, a smart watch for kids that combines digital banking with financial literacy education. It empowers children to learn money skills early, while giving parents real-time oversight. A true blend of hardware, education, and fintech. Abisoye believes that the intersection of real estate, identity, and community is the future. His work is not just about building platforms, it's about reshaping how Africans access wealth, engage with government, and raise the next generation of tech-savvy citizens. Voice, vision and leadership. A deeply reflective leader, Abisoye frequently shares his journey, lessons, and vulnerability on platforms like LinkedIn, offering hard-won insights to the next generation of founders. He is passionate about mentoring African and global youth, advocating for digital innovation, and building tech with heart.
We're making new plans. The future isn't just for the few. It's for the builders, the believers, the dreamers like you. Kaloa Michael, diasporans and bridge. The 14 worldwide share this passion. One-on-one, the conversation flows. Unfiltered thoughts as the truth unfolds. Lessons
Well, welcome to yet another piece of one-on-one with me, Patricia Nkwane, right here. A place where we interview game changers, pace setters, and CEOs across Africa just to appreciate the amazing work that is being done in Africa, for Africa, around Africa. Today, we are having here on one-on-one an amazing gentleman, one of the game changers, one of the pace setters in Africa, Mr. Abisoye Bello. And we are going to have quite an amazing, interesting conversation with him, a conversation that I believe will be inspirational to the both of us, a conversation that I believe will contribute to the inspiring and changing and transforming of Africa. We are all about reshaping, transforming, enlightening, and growing our Africa to where we've always wanted it to be. Mr. Abisoye, good day.
Good day. Yeah, good evening from here.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's good afternoon in Botswana, and I'm sure it's good morning somewhere. Um, welcome to One on One.
Right. I'm glad to be.
Again, just to kickstart our conversation, let me just request that you introduce yourself to our beautiful listeners, and maybe also touch a little bit on the vision and the motivation behind the project that you're currently working on.
Okay. So my name is Abisoye, like you rightly said, and my I happen to have about 20 years experience in tech industry, and this whole experience actually started when I was 16 years old. My mom kind of just dropped me at a computer training center, and there was this connection like between me and technology, and that happened. And after that, it's been from one tech school to another tech school, from to another tech school, then to China, where I got to learn more about tech, and I started working with other tech companies, until when I started, doing so many. I mean, I started building for other people, work with different companies like Avagachi, and work on a series of fintech companies as well. I mean, at some point, it felt more like it felt more like life around tech alone. That's the only thing you get to know, and there was a time that I was right at home. There's a particular mall right in front of my complex, and I was looking at that mall, and I was looking at, and it took them about 6 to 8 months for them to finish the entire mall. And while I was looking at the mall, I was like, how come it took them this short time to finish this mall? But then, what was amazing that during the opening ceremony of that mall, the whole investors came over to look at the mall, and there were about 5 to 10 people, about 5 to 7 people that invested money together into building that mall. And at that moment, it struck me that, so whenever people actually want investment for to build something like malls and all that, it goes through private investments. Like, people, the rich, gather the rich together to do something bigger. So pretty much under the table, not on the table. So at that moment, the only idea that came to my mind then was more like, so what about the possibility of having 1,000 people coming together to build a mall? So instead of one person building a mall, 1,000 people could just put money together to build a mall. Or let's say 1 million people or 1 million Africans would put money together to build a mall. So in this case, it becomes owning their own things, not looking for investment from outside the country. And I then at that moment, but then the only issue then was more like the technology wasn't available at that was 10 years ago. How do you build it? But then I do understand the fact this what we're talking about right now is almost as simple as buying shares. So how do you now build it? How do you manage it? And that was the issue back then, 10 years ago. Fast forward, I fast forwarded to 10 years later. I was in Nigeria, and I was like, oh, I can do this now because I'm in Nigeria, and I had to start meeting people. And that was the beginning of the journey I'm on right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, Interesting, interesting. You know, as you are talking, I'm reminded of a story I currently had in South Africa, where young people in South Africa decided to group themselves up and then registered and opened the first South Africa fully South African citizen owned bank. And you look into it, you realize, it's minds like this that are, enlightening us into the reshaping accessing of wealth across Africa for the Africans, because for some reason we have always had a mindset of the rich growing richer and the poor growing poorer, and because we have normalized that, it's more of the poor giving up on trying something and then the rich accessing the opportunities that are there. Maybe if you can touch a little bit on the whole transformation and understanding of generational wealth, where do we see it going for us Africans 10 years from today?
So where do we see the way I see generational wealth? I mean, back in those days, I mean, there was a time where land was very important. People buy lands and people transfer lands. Then eventually, people buying gold and people currency are being backed by gold. And as at today, it is more of a digital. People buying bitcoins and all that, and bitcoins. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of friends telling me that instead of them leaving properties for their child, they'll probably leave bitcoins for their child, which is pretty much digital gold today. And so, in another 10 years' time, the way I see it is Africans coming together to own majority of their lands, co-ownership majority of their lands digitally, and knowing the fact that we have to be in one place to knowing that we don't have to be in one place to kind of to manage it. We can literally be anywhere, and I don't actually have to worry about, okay, fine, this someone is going to take this land because everything's kind of digitally registered on a blockchain and things are pretty much secure. So in another 10 years time, I feel like, I mean, looking at the way Africa is actually growing right now in terms of technology, we're doing way better than 10 years ago. And in another 10 years time, your properties and all that will be totally digitized. And I mean, the future for Africa in terms of wealth will be basically on co-ownership, digitizations, and digitization of properties. Right.
You know, I love the fact that some of these things that you're talking about, they are very relatable to us Africans, because it's basically a core of where we are coming from that we lost along the way. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, the first university in Botswana, which
Right.
actually happens to be the biggest university in the country, for it to be built, as they were starting to build the first university in Botswana, the current biggest university in the country, what had to happen was different families in the country had to each contribute a cow.
Wow.
And those cows were then sold to actually build and establish the first university. And actually, it's one of the biggest buildings and the amazing buildings in the country. And you look into it, you realize it has always been us. It has always been us coming together and working together. It's something that is, within us. But talking of you in appreciating the wealth attainment and generational wealth going into the years, I think I'm just curious to ask this before we continue to our next question, to say, over the years, we have heard countries like Botswana, for example, whose economy has been solemnly relying on the beautiful diamonds,
Right.
being one of the countries that produces the largest diamonds in the world. And now coming to a space where we have countries that are now producing lab grown diamonds that are now standing in competition with the natural diamonds. And to say, what, in 10 years to come, for countries that have been fully dependent on the natural resources that they have, where do we see and what do we see happening to them going forward?
Now, the way I say it is, countries are still going to be holding their own natural resources. The reality is this: the whole aspect of natural resources, it doesn't really. I mean, it's good for the country, But then the reality now is this: for the people, how much of it is being passed down to the people? How much do individual daily earners? How much do they actually get to earn? I mean, how much? This is the only thing that actually matters. Now, for me as a person, I'm Nigerian. Have I seen a diamond before? Probably not. Now, my countries, do we have gold in Nigeria? Probably yes. So if the countries actually have goals and all this, whatever they do have them, I mean, it does make a lot of sense. So as countries, oh yeah, we would probably, countries will still have all these things, they will still hold these things. But then when it comes to people, when it comes to the individual citizens, it becomes a different thing entirely because the younger ones today are not, they don't want to depend on the government anymore because I mean, we've been failed so many times. So everyone's looking towards how everything can actually be like, everything can actually be owned in a different way. And this is where the whole life thing comes in. And as
Mm,
speaking with you right now, there's digital gold.
mm,
And I'm sure at some point there will be digital diamond. And
mm,
our company, what we are building is digital properties. So literally,
mm,
but in another 10 years time, literally everything will literally go digital, and the digital is going to be backed by the digital is pretty much going to be backed by the physical. That's the what that's
mm,
what's like in 10 years. So why the
mm,
government, the new generations, the normal people like you and I get to hold the digital versions, and that is how we make
mm,
our own pass down to generation of our kids.
mm, mm. I think what I'm appreciating is the fact that firstly we have to get to the realization that the effect of it would differ in terms of nation by nation, depending on what has the benefit been to the people. Because you look, for example, I'll just keep saying Botswana because basically my understanding is around that place more than any other place. For example, when you get to Botswana being a producer of diamonds,
Right.
we have enjoyed free educations. Our children are enjoying free education because
You guys,
in one of our major laws is our diamonds go to education. So eventually when our diamonds are for education and health. So we have free education and free health space. So eventually when they don't sell, that means there is a challenge in the education space and in the health space. I went through school from your zero to tertiary, paid zero money. My diamonds paid for it. But anyway, let's continue with our conversation.
that is totally different from what we experience. Like in our case being Nigerian, we get to pay through our nose. Like you get to pay for everything.
I fully understand. That's why I'm saying the challenge, the pain of it will be felt country, but it will differ in nations.
Yes,
But to continue with our conversation,
right.
we are talking chain block adoption in real estate as one of the relatively nascent ideas. And maybe if we can touch on what are the biggest technical and regulation hurdles that you had to face in that space.
Oh yeah, one of the major issues that we currently having right now is the concept of the Nigeria the market, the launch pad market that we have, which is Nigeria. Everything is still being done traditionally. So it's more like we're thinking about like when people want to at the initial stage, whenever people want to change money, you go from one person to the other, you give them physical cash. But then what we're now doing now is we're telling people that, oh, you don't need to exchange papers for properties anymore. You can do everything online and all that. And some people would tell you, no, my property costs millions. Why should I just exchange? I need to go see. I need to do verifications. I need to do all those things. But the way we are doing it, we are building everything, connecting everything, and so the people's attitude towards what we're actually building has been a little bit, and how we're dealing with it is by informing and educating, telling them the entire flow that, and making sure they actually understand these things. So a quick example is one of the properties that we actually onboarded a couple of days ago. That it took the property developer about almost a month for him to finally accept that. Oh, yeah, let's see what happens. And that was, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of education around it, but eventually he was able to accept. So the people, Nigerians, Africans, we are used to doing things traditionally, and
Yeah.
yeah, so much used to. And also in terms of compliances, government compliances and all that. Everything's actually in place. Like we need to apply for the SEC license as well. There are also some other blockchains, crypto, whatever license that we actually need to apply for. In which some one way or the other it doesn't really apply to us. But then we have compliance officers telling us that we actually need to apply it because we're dealing with blockchains. So one way is actually the government issues. The other way is actually the end user issues. And I mean, information education is one way we get to go around it.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. While as we're still talking about technology and innovation, maybe let's talk about the balance between innovation and practicality in ensuring mainstream adoption.
Right, right. Like I said earlier on, the practical part is this. Uh, so when I left China when I left Nigeria for China, people barely
Mm,
we spend cash. We take paper money, we take it over to wherever we want to buy stuff. When I got to China, it was a different thing entirely. Oh, when I got to China, we were spending cash as well. But one day, someone invented WeChat, and they invented Alipay, and they said, okay, fine, you don't need to use paper anymore. You just need to scan the QR
mm,
code. Oh, yeah. And it became a more like, oh, yeah, money could be digital too. Money
mm,
could, and it took a lot of time for for the entire Chinese population to kind of accept it. A lot of education, and and
mm,
I I was lucky to have experienced the entire transformative years of China from when they had from when Alibaba or when WeChat started, which is when it originally started, till where it is today, and looking at how the market is structured, and that is the same thing I actually think about when it comes to the Nigerian market. Fintech has done a lot of work when it comes to the Nigerian market. When it comes to the African market, fintech has done a lot of work. But then we still have we still have a lot of things to do, a lot of roads to cover, a lot of things to achieve, and those things won't actually be achieved overnight. It will come in
mm.
with education, a lot of seminars, a lot of seminars to break through the barrier of trust, because Africans and trust are like 5 and 6.
Yeah.
That- so a lot of education actually needs to come in place and all that. So a good example, I told my mother about putting our property on our platform, which is on blockchain, and she was like, okay, I'll think about that. So like, oh, I think about that, and the issue is like, I trust you as my child, but I don't trust this thing that you're talking about. I trust you.
Mm,
Trust. I mean, this whole thing. I mean, leave my property there. Whenever there's a buyer, we just find a buyer. But telling me that 1,000 or 1 million people could buy into one property, that doesn't make any sense to her. So, but then
mm,
education, information and all that, like, being able to like sit down, explain to her how it's going to work and all that, help us saw a better light. And telling her the fact, I mean, most especially when she realized the fact that rather than waiting for a couple of days or a couple of months to sell a property, to take just a few seconds or a few minutes for us to get liquidity for it became
yeah.
so when people see results, they accept. That's just it.
Mm,
People see the result,
mm.
accept and all that. Right.
Yeah. But just out of curiosity though, you talk about the fact that, okay, fine, when we see results, it becomes easy for us to buy into the idea. But often at times you realize that most people miss out opportunities because you wait to see results. And by the time results starts to show up, the market is already crowded and
Right.
it's not as fruitful as it would have been when you started it. And it's the mindset that's there in Africa, whether we are talking network marketing, whether we are talking in any space, we would want convincing. And sometimes I wonder if this is more of a trauma response that's coming from the colonial period or whatever. But that's us. That's
Right.
well, Mr. Abisoye, you are a man of so many herds. You've built ventures across Nigeria, China, the blockchain space. And maybe if we can talk about the lessons that you've learned in about scale up, startup in the emerging market, lessons that you've learned, if you can share with us those pearls of wisdom that you've acquired along the way.
One of the major things that I have learned is the fact that speed actually doesn't win. Trust does. So the fact that African market is actually is one of the significant thing when it comes to the fact that you rush to the market doesn't actually matter, but when people trust you, you can actually capture the out of millions and all that. And also the infrastructure gaps, infrastructural gaps also can actually affect, can actually be the fact that there's an infrastructural gap in the African space can actually hinder progress. But if you can leverage on community and relationship, it could actually move you further. So trust, very important. Leverage on community when building, and leverage on community and relationship when building. And one thing I used to tell my fellow co-founders is like, if you want to sell anything, sell it to your family first. If your family can buy into it, then people might likely buy into it. But if your family cannot, then so I know important. There's always an importance. One of the things I also learned about African market, because I built a product in China that literally never worked, but then it was Nigeria became a different thing entirely. So there's always this importance of building something offline before you make it online. Building offline in the sense that you build relationship, you build interactions, you reach out to partners one on one. They get to see your face. They see your face. They see what you're building. They understand what you. They understand the concept. They're able to ask questions and you get feedback, live feedback. So these are the things. These are my major entrepreneurship lessons. Right.
Yeah. Let's entrepreneurship and resilience. Maybe let's talk persevere and pivot.
Okay.
When did you choose which?
You said what? Can you repeat that again? When do I choose to?
Talking of persevering and pivoting,
Okay.
how do you decide which to go with, when to persevere versus to pivot?
I think those things actually goes with the mindset. Like for example, I once had a product called Adever. Um,
Mm,
Built the entire infrastructure, a bigger infrastructure, spent about 2 years building. But then on getting to the real market, you realize the fact that the market is actually not ready for this. So the market is actually not ready for this. So you can see the market there. You can see the market that the market is actually not ready for it. So and then once you see that the market is actually not ready for something and you've already built it, the next thing you could do is like see the applications of what you're building into what the market is actually ready for, and that is where pivoting comes in. So and when do you leave a product? When do you leave a product? Is from my perspective, I feel like the moment you start thinking about quitting, you've already quit. The moment you start thinking about, "Oh, I don't want to do this, it's not going to work out anymore. So not going to work out anymore. So it's always good. It's always good to have clear goals that you kind of see as, okay, fine. This is my goal for the month. This is what I'm going to be able to achieve by the end of the month, and this is what I'm going to be able to. This is what I call traction. For example, I want to be able to have a certain amount of partners before I launch the product or before I spend anything able to achieve this. Now, so those are the things that. So if you're able to achieve those goals, then it means the fact that, okay, fine, these are the tractions. Then they are evident for you, to continue. And if you're not able to meet the goals that you actually set for yourself, it means the fact that or you can actually like reconsider maybe taking a different direction. But you will know it. You would for every person know that, okay, fine, this is the time for me to stop, and this is the time for me to just continue building. And in my case, built, I was emotionally attached. I continued building, and then it was when I got to Nigeria, it dawned on me that, okay, man, you need to stop. You need to stop the pivot.
Yeah.
And I asked for that. Right.
You know, one of the advices
Right.
that I've heard, and I'm still battling with adopting it and sticking with it. I've heard a couple of times. I've heard people talk about stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane, and I'm like, what if my lane is boring? What if eventually my lane becomes monotonous? What if eventually my lane is not as exciting as, you know, as exciting as it got to be when I got into it. And well, that is me over analyzing anything. But the thought of it as you are talking about knowing when the market is ready for something, as you were talking, I was reminded of this gentleman. Apparently, this gentleman released a song
Right.
so many years back and invested all he has into marketing the song and trying to sell the song, one way or the other. The song didn't sell. Eventually he lost a lot of money, he lost a lot of things into trying to push the song. And then, to cut the story short, he decided, you know what, music is not for me,
Right.
and he left that space. And then early end of 2024, going into 2025, a new music genre erupts in South Africa called Lekompo. And then people start putting one and one, and they realize that song, the
Was
so many years back song, was actually a Lekompo song.
my God.
So now the song is trending, and people are asking, where is this guy? Where is other music? What other songs has he released?
Right. And that.
And guy has already moved on into something else, and something else that is not even, the song is even doing more better than where he is currently.
You can imagine. So
And maybe that is where the persevering comes into play, to say, you know what, like you're saying, sometimes it's about reading the market and being in a space of realizing if the market is ready or not. But in such a scenario, what do you do?
oh, you mean how do you know when your market is ready? Oh,
No, I
wow.
mean, for example, in a scenario like this guy with a song, or somebody else that is, you're selling something, but the appreciation currently is like, for example, I'm into therapy and counseling, and I know at times when I talk to people about issues of mental health, it's like, I'm just speaking a foreign kind of thing, but you'll be like, but the people need this, but the appreciation of what you're selling right there in the marketplace is at zero.
So one thing. So the way I would actually say is this, right? Uh, I have a product. I have a product. Now, one thing you need to know now is this: the product I actually have. Some people are billionaires with that product. That they might not be beside it, but the reality is this. I mean, see your product as a social media. For example, I used to tell my colleague that everyone online has an audience. So if you post anything on online on TikTok, for example, the likelihood of you getting your own set of gang who will like what you post are just going to be there and all that if you post consistently. So
Yeah.
it is this: whatever you're selling right now, someone actually wants it. The reality is like knowing who wants it matters. Now, so that situation. The other situation is like knowing what they want before you actually start it. So, two scenarios: you have something. I'm a doctor, for example, or let's say I'm an electrician, for example. I do it. But then the neighborhood I live in, most of them they don't need a service. So, but I do know very well that there are some electricians about 56 kilometers from me that are doing very, very well. So I get to
Yeah.
decide: am I in the wrong? Am I in the wrong pool? Am I in the wrong pool, or am I actually having the wrong product? So, so in China, for example, in China, the product I had in China was a good product for Chinese market, but I was building the market. But it was a good product for Chinese market. Now, another funny example was a year after I left, I pivoted. Someone reached out for me from Colombia saying they want that product that I left 1 year ago. So, so it's almost similar to the guy's case. So it's like someone wants it now, but you've left it. So the way I say the product is it's mostly about you. What we mostly don't do is we want to sell to a specific set of people. What about if we could do a global search of who needs our product? I want to sell to Nigeria. I don't know anybody in Colombia. I'm not even thinking about Colombia, right? I'm not thinking about Colombia. So I sell to Colombia. I don't want to sell. I know China, I know Nigeria. These are the people I want to sell to. And if these people are actually not doing anything, what would I do? I would probably just pivot because I want to sell to the people that I know very well. So I want to sell I know very well. And the other markets that you cannot reach, the only way you can reach them is if you have enough money to do marketing to those areas. So the way I would do it, like if I'm going to start anything all about, is to sell to look for what people want, build something that people want, rather than building something for something that people actually don't want. For people that you don't even know who wants it, but someone wants it, but you don't actually know who actually wants it. The person that wants it, it might be in US, but you don't know this person. So I could literally focus on what the people around me actually want. Science have shown that if I'm a therapist, for example, I could focus on what aspect of therapy do people actually want in my community. Oh, they don't care about the therapy, me talking thing. I could do a lot of research on what type of therapy do people actually want, and what neighborhood in my community, what neighborhood in my city would they probably value this thing? Would they probably value this service? I don't want Nigeria. Someone like me, if you ask me to go see a therapy, I will probably not go. But then I know some of my friends, if you ask them about therapy, they go for therapy session every single day. So they are your customers. But we're not living in the same community. So if the people are not here, they are somewhere else. They're somewhere else. So it's all about knowing where your market is. One. Number two is what is the proximity between you and your market. Number three, if you don't understand the things, then how about you just build for the people that are around you? Now, how about just build for the people around you? If you are able to build for the people around you, then it becomes you can have enough money to find the people that are not within your proximity. Then target them and all that. So that's the way I see it.
Basically, more to do with positioning, being able to fully position yourself well. I love that. I like that. Well, we are going to go for a very short break. We'll be right back after the break.
One-on-one, the conversation flows. Unfiltered thoughts as the truth unfolds. Lessons learned.
Bridge a Freak magazine, BAM, is the powerful force to showcase your business to the world. Is your advert on the next edition yet? Make haste and connect with any of our coordinators across the world. One love. www.bridgeafreakmagazine.net.
At SkyMaxi Global Sourcing and Distribution Company, we render professional help to our clients to locate factories, get competitive prices, follow up on products sourced inspection, ensuring quality and express product delivery to our clients. We are your direct connection with fully vetted factories in China. We also mine mineral resources in Nigeria and have the license to export to all the world.
magazine, bringing Africa closer to the world. Bringing Africa magazine closer to the world. Opportunities waiting, see them swirl. Bridge Africa magazine, we open the door. Global businesses, there's so much more. Africa magazine, we connect the dream from every corner. Join the team. Africa's rising, the future is bright. With Bridge Africa magazine, let's take flight. From local roots to the global stage, your business journey starts this page. Bridge Africa, let's make it clear. Africa's calling, let's all draw near. From local roots to the global stage, your business journey starts this page. Let's make it clear, Africa's calling, let's all draw near. From local roots to the global stage, your business journey starts this page. Let's make it clear, Africa's calling, let's all draw near. From local roots to the global stage, your business journey starts this page. Let's make it cling, let's make it clear. Africa's calling, let's all draw near. One-on-one, the conversation flows. Unfiltered thoughts as the truth unfolds. Lessons learned.
All right, welcome back. We are continuing. It's one-on-one. If you're just joining us, it's one-on-one right here with me, Patricia. I am joined by the amazing Abisoye. We've been learning. I've learned a lot, and I know we are continuing and learning from him. The game changers, the pace setters, the CEO, people that are involved in bettering Africa and bettering the mindsets of the Africans, so we could take Africa to where we've always aspired to see it be. And our conversation is continuing. Mr. Abisoye, welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, so now I want us to talk about your impact. I'm a huge believer that as Africans, or as I would say marginalized communities, whether it's women, as Africans, as black people, we need to be in a space where when opportunities come your way, or you are able to break into bigger and better city, it becomes a duty unto you to be sending down elevators to ensure a lot other people are taken to the seats, to the bigger spaces, to the opportunities, just so it doesn't end up with just you. For me, I believe that if I'm to sit in a boardroom and I'm the only woman in the boardroom and I leave without creating a space for another woman to sit, I haven't done a good job. So maybe let's talk about your space in mentoring young African founders, young African minds. What is that big advice that you keep giving that you give and why, and maybe also touch on your role models.
Oh, okay. One thing that I used to one thing that I tell friends, I used to mentor a couple of younger ones back in China, and I still do online, but not as frequent as before. And one thing is like start small. Start small and do it well.
Yeah.
Start small, do it well. If you can satisfy, if I'm your only client and you can satisfy me, then that is a job well done. So just do it well, then scale from there. So it doesn't. You don't need 5,000 clients to be. You don't need 5,000 clients to be okay. You need just one client, one person that believes in what you're doing, that's ready to buy from you. Then from 1 to 5, from 5 to 10, from 10 to, and it goes up like that. As long as you keep progressing. And also, and one other thing that Africans actually do is always funding, always wanting to fund. Like they want to get funding. Yeah, they want to get funding. That we're looking for investors. So one thing that I would say is like, don't wait for funding and all that. If you have an idea, look for a way to build it. I mean, these days it's a lot easier to build a product than a couple of years ago. Years ago, you have to go down, back, like code every single day and all that. But these days, so it's super easy. So so many online, there's AI online and all that. So and also one thing is build with audience, build with the people that you want to sell to. No, so if I want to, for example, if I want, my job is to make furniture, sell to furnitures. I'm just going to build one furniture and sell it, and look for someone in my community to say, oh, this is the furniture designs. I think about it. Sell it to one person. Then if you have any other furniture idea, show the same people the same furniture idea. I have these ideas. What do you guys think? Get feedback from them. You build it. So just keep building. So this building with them, you're not building two different things entirely. You build with, you don't. So build with people, build with people that you actually trust, build with your community. My role model, I'll say my stepdad. He played a lot of uh, lot of role how I think today, and also another person I sort of look up to is Jack Ma. Jack Ma, the elephant of Taobao, and yeah. So these are my two major role models.
Okay. Maybe you are my role model. We'll never know. Okay. Panda Watch targets financial literacy for kids. And I am told you have quite a broader vision for tech-driven societal change. How does that align with that vision of tech-driven societal change?
Yeah. So when we started Panda Watch, it was a different thing. It was we wanted to watch for kids. You know? We just wanted to watch for kids. But then when we got to Nigeria, it was a different thing entirely. We realized the fact that kids in Nigeria, adults in Nigeria have their phones and all that, have their phones, but kids don't have phones. Adults in Nigeria, they're able to save money and all that, have their own banking and all that, but banking and all that. They don't actually have all these things. But over there in China, it was more of it's not uncommon to see children having their own bank account, having their own wallet, whereby they save money and all that. And I remember while growing up, we had something in Nigeria we call code, where you put your money as a child, you put your money inside. So I was like, how about we just develop something? We develop a smartwatch that allows kids to save their money on the smartwatch. And that was it. And one thing that I lacked when I was growing up was financial education. Nobody talking about finances. So I was like, so we built a watch that teaches kids about finances and also allows them to save their money. Then at that time we approached the bank to done with them, and things went on and all that. We're still in the process. We're still in the process. We're looking at about 2007 to launch our first version and all that. Market has accepted. But uh, between the time we started Panda Watch, we got a lot of feedback from the school. If they could put their curriculums, coach, we got a lot of feedback by the partner. We now get feedback into actions, putting the feedback into action to develop ahead of the 2007.
Okay, awesome. That's interesting. That's interesting. Now you see why you are my role model. Like, you think it's such ideas. I'm inspired by such ideas where we are able to innovate over our ideas, where I'm able to say, okay, fine, I'm creating these, and then eventually I realize a huge need beyond what I thought the idea is about, and allow the flexibility to bring it to solving the need, because eventually if we are to lack flexibility in growing whatever that we have, eventually we'll have it, but it will be useless to the market and the spaces that we are trying to bring it to. Because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, often at times we'll have, people coming up with ideas that they established in the UK and coming to bring it to Botswana, to Zambia, and you are there like, but this doesn't suit the space of this place. But if only you can allow it to communicate a need, then you'll be able to sell this, because the way you are presenting it doesn't communicate any of our needs. To us, some of these things, they can come as luxury, and I'm like, it's just luxury, I don't need it. But the moment you present a need I have, I'm like, I really need this, because talking of like a typical example, part of what I do is academic excellence, right? So when we talk about, okay, academic coaching, to somebody else, it sounds like, okay, it's just luxury.
Right.
But the moment you bring in the aspect of learners with learning challenges and learning disabilities, it's a need, because eventually that is where majority of the complaints of parents are. And that only comes when you are able to bridge in flexibility in whatever that you are selling, which is quite a very interesting and amazing thing that you are doing. So now I want us to talk about Web3 and real estate. That convergence that is between the two in the next 5 years. Where do we see these two? Where do we see the biggest convergence between Web3 and real estate?
I would say identity, two, liquidity. Very, very important. Identity and liquidity. Over the years, it has always been in the past couple of years, it requires time, money to buy because they don't know who is this, they don't know. Technology coming into place, it becomes easier to identify who actually identity is themselves. Then this brings liquidity. I'm able to know who owns the property within the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Then it's easier for me to just buy as well within the blink of an eye. So it increases the chance of liquidity. So identity and liquidity. Another part is actually something we call RWA, reward asset on chain. Becoming becoming DeFi collateral. So now the concept of like banks, the concept of people using banks, people using their property as collateral in the banks, and the banks happen to delay, wait for a long time before they actually approve those loans and all that. In the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, that might be a history. With people being able to access properties, real estate on chain. For example, what we are building, if you have a collateral, if you have a property on our platform, you can literally access a loan within 1 minute. Just click and get a loan. So, and it's the interest on the loan is way cheaper compared to the bank. So in the next 5 years, it's gonna be a totally different. And there will be no reason why people are go queue at the bank for soft loans if they could get it with their property tokens and all that. So ownership in the 5 years, I mean, the concept of ownership being binary, like people, there'll be more co-ownership. There'll be more co-ownership. People like already people are already doing that. About 7 people businesses and all that, but it's still difficult to manage. A company like ours, what we do is we provide a platform that allows how to co-own one thing, thousands to co-own one thing, and thousands of people all across Africa to co-own a property or to co-own a mall in Uganda. That is so co-ownership will stop. Rather, I mean, ownership will stop being binary. Ownership will become more in the next 5 years, next 5 to 10 years, and also legal practitioners and all that will also change as well. If identity is being sought for professional legal practitioners, it's easier for you to access it's easier for you to access legal practitioners. Also, it's easier for you to legal practitioners as well. Treasury, almost the entire government will literally change as well when it comes to real estate blockchain because everything's on chain, and if everything's on chain, means that and it means everything is available to everybody, and the data can be verified anytime.
Okay, that's awesome. That's interesting. How do you plan to ensure community-led decisions don't compromise scalability?
Oh,
Now, looking at eventually governance would be decentralized. How do we ensure that community-led decisions don't compromise scalability?
right. One thing we do right now is conducting voting and also governance models, uh, and also uh, we have a legal marketplace that handles almost all credibility and community decisions. And also treasury. The treasury will be proposed that is still
Yeah. You are very, very diverse in career. IT, design, blockchain, whatever. You very diverse.
oh yeah. This
very very diverse. And I'm here thinking, what a man of many hats, and somebody else might be thinking, what, how are you able to balance all these things, and what are the strategies that you've put in place that helps you to be able to ensure that, what, there is none that's overpowering the other, but you are able to balance everything that you do? Because I think maybe with us women, for example, we are multitaskers, but one way or the other, very easy to lose focus in the same space. I can multitask, but if I come across one idea, that speaks volumes to me. All the other ideas take a back bench
okay.
just so this one can keep going, you see. And I'm here, I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, how do you ensure that all these things, are ran without any going into the back bench? What are the strategies that you're applying? And maybe we can learn something from those.
Sincerely speaking, there's no strategy at all. One thing is this: I started hardware at the very beginning of my life, literally. So I started, and I love hardware. I still fix things. I still solve. I still build out. I love hardware. But then I started software after I got software after I got a China, and I realized the fact, software is interesting. I was able to, then the was where IoT started happening. Controlling hardware with the software. So we've been able to use what I've learned before and what I've learned to combine the two together. So it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna learn that too. I think there was a principle we worked on at the time, designer. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna. So I took on the task. I took on the task for them. I realized the fact that those software require designing. So it means the fact that if you know how to actually understand the grassroots, and that was how. And so there's no strategy. There's no strategy of how I put them together. Well, it just depends on the state of what I'm actually doing that. And what I realized, how they have actually taught me patience, empathy, design empathy, and blockchain analysis works. And basically, everything, all these things are putting them.
Okay, that's very interesting. Tommy, you know, as Africans,
Right.
we have, I'll just say Africans because I don't know about other people, but as Africans, we have a huge myth around vulnerability, more especially if it's coming from a man, you
Yeah.
know, and we are far off when it comes to embracing authenticity and transparency. And I want to understand, you have had shared up moments of vulnerability at some space. And what I want to understand is how has the transparency impacted your leadership, and also bringing in the aspect of culture, one way or the other. I grew up from a cultural background where, growing up with my brothers, I knew I could cry as much as I wanted. I could throw tantrums as much as I wanted. But with my brother, it will be more of, what kind of a man are you? What kind of a man are you? What kind of a husband are you going to be? If you are talking too much like this, you talk like a woman, and I've seen the self-silencing happen so much that, even today, we like parallel to get information from him, you have to dig. On the other hand, if I'm feeling some type of way, I simply go to him and I go like, you know what, I'm not happy with 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm really sad today. And then expecting the same from him is another thing. And maybe if you can talk about how this has impacted, like the transparency, how has it impacted your leadership and also the cultural aspect of it?
Okay. Every time I used to have a problem with transparency. I don't want to tell people everything. I don't want to. Now, one of the reasons, but then whenever I don't, realize that the problem. So, not being open, it's always like open. Now, I also used to think being vulnerable is a problem. Yeah, vulnerable doesn't make you. Then it became a different thing entirely. So so right now the way I operate, in which I don't even know how that changed. I don't know how that changed. The way of total transparency, and the reason is because of the fact that avoid what I think about is what could be a future avoid today if it could become because yeah, and I, I used to kind of mind meet you just that's it. And so whenever I was like, I mean, just I just tell them, and they're like, all right. And the reality is that most of the time, person could do, think too much in our head that by the what we do. So transparency has when I started my own project, sharing with people, building cultures
Yeah.
with the community. Then you have to be fully open, tell them exactly what you need to get real feedback from people. You have to take critics. You cannot afford to get, but you have to put people on our side. You have to be vulnerable to see you clearly and all. Basically, that has been that's helped me that's helped with the production, helped people, that's helped with my communications, even with my mentor today. It has
Awesome, awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are about to say bye to each other. But before we do, and before I even ask you to say your last words of encouragement, maybe we normally love to get feedback from our guests to say, you know what, your overview of Bridge Africa and Bridge Africa magazines and our programs, and maybe just your thought on it, and maybe also share your message to our Bridge African audience.
okay. Like if you ever want to tell a story, you ever want to tell a story, you want to tell a story about yourself, Africa, leaders, not just so. Uh, if you ever feel I think that that is what it's all about. Uh, making building by Africans, and I like what I mean. I like the concept. So that I also think that ever felt pride, you can. There's nothing wrong with starting small. Nothing wrong with starting small. So Nigerians land is it's actually a foot for us. We can't wait someone come over and do everything.
Yes, yes, yes. We are growing in it. We are growing in it, and we are loving every second of it. So before I get to say bye, thank you so much for coming by and for all the information that we have learned. I've learned a lot, and I know everybody that's going to come across this video, they're going to learn a lot. And I know as well there is just so much that we still can learn from you, and I hope you will be joining me for another conversation some other time soon. But in the meantime, maybe if you can share just your word of encouragement to young people, young women across Africa, your last words of encouragement.
Oh, okay. My last one of it. Keep building as Africans. Keep building. I mean, keep building. We Africans. We do a lot. We are still doing a lot. The reality is Africa is meant for Africa. Built by Africa. And if you need a space, if you need take a break, sure, take a break. But don't take a
Thank you so much, Mr. Abisoye. Mr. Abisoye, thank you so much Well, that was the one-on-one with me, Patricia. Nkwane, we had quite a beautiful conversation. I normally reference this proverb that I know that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years back. The second best time is now. I do believe that whatsoever we feel, we may have failed at it so many years, some years back, we may have not gotten it right. Some years back, this is our second best time as African. Our second best time is now. It is time for us to stand up. It's time for us to try new ideas. It's time for us to revisit that innovative side of us, and also most importantly, it's time for us to learn how to come together, to work together, to thrive together, and try and see how much we can build when we learn to walk at it.
One-on-one, the conversation flows, unfiltered thoughts as the truth unfolds, lessons learned and paths they've trod, inspiring minds with every word, pioneers and innovators blazing trails, their passions and perseverance set them sail. Through triumphs and setbacks they found their way to the top of their game day by day. One-on-one, the conversation flows,